So we're live. This is the essentials of becoming a master hypnotist. I'm James Tripp. I should be being joined, if everything runs smoothly, by Vinny Curto any moment now. We'll see how that works out, because I know that there's been some technical difficulties in our test runs before this call. We're going to be keeping this webinar reasonably short and focused. I know I often do longer webinars. I'm going to keep this one to about 45 minutes to an hour. So maybe we're going to go 45 minutes. If there's some questions that have come in, I can't say I'll answer all the questions, because last time I did a webinar, there were a lot more questions than I normally get. So I was a bit kind of taken aback. I was caught on the back foot that time. So I can't say I'll answer all the questions that come in, but I'll answer some of the more juicy ones, hopefully, or perhaps just the first ones that come in. Okay, so just to check in, Vinny, are you on the call? Are you able to hear this or join this? Well, unless Vinny's lost his voice, I'm guessing that Vinny's not here yet. So I'm going to move ahead with some of the content I've prepared. I know Vinny had some questions for me. Hopefully he'll be able to jump in and ask those questions at some point. But I'm going to move on with the content that I've prepared anyhows. And all of the content obviously pertains to the title of this webinar, which is the essentials of becoming a master hypnotist. Now, the first thing I'll say about this, becoming a master hypnotist, is that it's a kind of an erroneous title in some way. You know, there's no such thing as a self-proclaimed or certificated master hypnotist. There's no definitive set of criteria that you can tick off and say, well, I've matched these criteria, so now I'm officially a master hypnotist. So really, you know, what does it mean to be a master hypnotist? How do you become a master hypnotist? I guess you become a master hypnotist when people start to see you that way. You know, I guess you become a master hypnotist when you know what you're doing. You show up with a certain grounding, a certain certainty in what you're doing, and you're able to regularly and consistently make the things happen that you want to have happen using hypnosis. So, you know, that's what a master hypnotist is. But really what I want this webinar to be about is you becoming the very best hypnotist that you can be. You know, the very best hypnotist that you can be. And you might think to yourself, well, you know, I don't know how good I can get. And that's true, you don't. You never know how good you can get. In fact, you know, you can be learning, studying, researching, developing hypnosis skills for absolutely years. And you might think, you know, I must be coming close to the end of the journey, but you can never know, you know. For me, hypnosis is like any art, any profound skill set. You can keep exploring, you can keep going deeper. There's always more to learn. There's always something new to discover. That's one of the things that keeps me involved in hypnosis, instead of just learning, you know, the fundamentals of how it works a few years back and then going, yeah, you know, well, I'm good to go now, so I'll keep ticking on. There's always something new to learn. There's always another layer to uncover. So really, hypnosis, I often talk about the path of mastery when I'm talking about hypnosis, not the path to mastery, but the path of mastery. Because real masters are those who stay on the path. And to use a term that I learned many years ago, an expression I learned many years ago when I was doing martial arts, they retain what is called the beginner's mind. The beginner's mind means they're always willing. They're always willing to explore more. They're always willing to learn more. They're always willing to suspend their biases and their ideas about how things are in order to open up and listen to a new idea and a new possibility. So that's what true masters do. So I'm going to offer that. I'm going to offer that as point number one. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to bring that. I'm going to come back to that point. I'm going to come back to that point about the beginner's mind towards the end of the webinar. So let me go through these points, and I've made these points. These are not the definitive. There's 9 points on my list here. These are not the definitive things. This is not the list of the 9 points. These are 9 salient points. If you want to be the very best hypnotist you can be, these are 9 salient points which are going to assist you in your journey to becoming that, and becoming that progressively more deeply. So the first thing I have on my shopping list here for master hypnotists is become a powerful leader. A master hypnotist is a powerful leader. When you're doing hypnosis, you're in a communications dynamic. It's a kind of psychosocial, psycho-communicative dynamic with another person, at least one other person, okay? Even if that person is yourself, you end up kind of fracturing yourself between being the hypnotist and the hypnotee. But let's say there's a dynamic of two, a dance of two, at least in every game of hypnosis. And you need to be the leader. If you're going to be a truly competent, masterful, grounded hypnotist, the ability to lead is all important. And this is one of the things I've seen coming up again and again and again when I run live trainings like the Hypnosis Skills Bootcamp, for example. Some of the people that come on, they're not sure, they're kind of hanging back, they don't want to be too pushy with people and all of this. There's an art to taking charge of the dynamic. Now, speaking for myself, I learned a lot about how to do that from performing magic and mentalism, interestingly, which I used to blend hypnosis with when I did street hypnosis stuff, street magic, that kind of thing. I learned that as a magician or as a mystery performer or whatever you want to call it, something like that, when you go up to a group of people, and even if you've been booked to go around and work at a party, the people at the party, they'll be in groups, they'll be having a good time, they'll be talking to each other, they'll be enjoying themselves. They're not standing around waiting for an entertainer to come up and bust into their conversation. So one of the things I learned to do was to be able to enter a group of people and become the leader of that group, sort of psychodynamically, so to speak, the leader of that group within a very short time. I used to have 3 seconds. That was my idea. I wanted to go in and take the lead of the dynamic. And also, I found through learning to do that and doing that in hypnosis, it was a significant thing in terms of transforming my communications in everyday life as well, because I found more and more and more that I was willing to take charge of conversations, to become the leader in a conversation. And that's a really useful, really powerful thing to do, because people appreciate that a lot of the time. It doesn't mean being pushy, it doesn't mean demanding that you're the leader, but a lot of people really appreciate it when you take the lead in everyday conversations and communications, because it kind of takes the pressure off them. It frees them up, particularly when meeting new people. So this is something to learn how to take the lead. When I did the Hypnosis Skills Bootcamp, there's a lot of skills around taking the lead. When we begin the weekend, there's a lot of work around that. And it's done non-verbally. I'm going to mention that again, doing stuff non-verbally in a little while within a slightly different context. So become a powerful leader, an effective leader, a leader of the psychosocial dynamic that is unfolding within the context we call hypnosis. So point number 2 here it relates to point number 1 in some ways. It is switch up your awareness. Develop your sensory acuity, your awareness, your sensitivity. Your sensitivity. I used to study Chinese martial arts many years ago. I taught Tai Chi for a number of years. I also did Russian martial arts as well, which have many similar principles, and they're taught in a very different way. And one of the key elements in Tai Chi Chuan and Baguazhang, 2-person work in Baguazhang as well, was the concept of sensitivity, of always being connected to the person that you're working with and always feeling, always being tapped into where they are energetically, so to speak, or in terms of their balance, the terms of their body movement dynamics, sort of this kind of stuff. So you can track it and follow it and be keyed into their center the whole time. This sensitivity was a key thing. So it's very different from what are often called the external martial arts, where you're just kind of smashing, punching, breaking, all of this kind of thing. You're really connected. And good wrestlers will know about this as well. I'm not saying this is the domain of Chinese internal martial arts. Good wrestlers, judo players, they'll know about sensitivity. They'll know about feeling I'm going to use the term energy, you can take that metaphorically if you like, the energy of their opponent. Now this is important in hypnosis as well. I've just talked about taking the lead. Taking the lead doesn't mean bossing people around. It doesn't mean pushing people around. It doesn't mean being authoritarian or aggressive or any of those things. You can take the lead, and your ability to take the lead is enhanced by your ability to be aware of where the person you're working with is at, where they are at in their mind, where they are at in their body, where they are at in their attitude, all of these kinds of things. Where they're at, when I say mind, I mean their quality of mind. You've probably heard of the notion of bypassing the critical faculty, okay, for example. And that's one way of thinking about a very interesting notion, which I'm going to be talking about actually later in the week in another context, which is the two modes of mind. But let's keep it as talking about bypassing the critical faculty. Here's a question for you. When you're working with somebody, how do you know when you are bypassing the critical faculty versus when you are engaging it? How do you know? What is it that tells you that? As I'm saying this, in the back of my mind, I'm aware that there's some colleagues of mine who are likely to be watching this, who I've had discussions with on Facebook groups about the critical faculty, and them saying there is no such thing as the critical faculty. There isn't a thing in your brain called the critical faculty. But when we're talking about critical faculty, we're talking about a particular mode of mind, a particular way of analytically engaging with things, which is not really what you want to have happening when you're doing hypnosis with somebody, particularly kind of hypnotic change work and stuff. Well, any hypnosis, I just mostly do. I mostly use hypnosis within the context of developmental coaching. So that's my area of expertise. But if you're wanting to help somebody shift their mind or shift their life or shift their experience, and this is what hypnosis is about, the use of language and communication to direct attention, lead cognition, and seed ideas for the purpose of leading somebody into an altered perception or experience of reality. This is my stock hypnosis without trance definition. It's not in the original hypnosis mastery program. I use a slightly different definition there, but things evolve, and this is the stock hypnosis without trance definition. Now, if you want to direct attention, lead cognition, and seed ideas, and somebody's there or skeptical about what you're saying, they're listening to agree or disagree. This is the way I often talk about it. The critical faculty is engaged when somebody is listening to agree or disagree with you, okay? Now, you might think it's a good thing that somebody agrees with you, okay? And if you're doing hypnotic phenomena, that can be a kind of a good thing. But if they're in the place of listening to agree or disagree, they are fully engaged in their model of the world, in their map of the world. They're fully engaged in analytic mode. Certainly from the perspective of change work, if you're interested in mastering hypnosis-based change work or coaching, there can be no change from a place of listening to agree or disagree, because if somebody agrees with you, it means what you've just suggested to them is fully aligned with their current understanding of the world and their current understanding of things, you see. So their mind isn't going to move to a new, fresh place. And if they disagree with you, well, they reject what you say. So their mind isn't going to move to a new, fresh place. You're going to fail to move their mind so long as they are listening to agree or disagree. So you want to find a way around that. And you want to get them to the place where they're no longer listening to agree or disagree, but they're listening from a place of possibility, what I call. You know, it's not I agree or I disagree, but they're going, well, what is there to see here? And they go in the direction with their mind that you're pointing it without critiquing it, without breaking it down, without analyzing it. They go into a more fluid state of mind. Okay, and some people might call this trance. You know, I'm not going to get into the whole debate about trance, no trance. I'm the hypnosis without trance guy. Who knows what the label trance applies to it? There's a certain fluid state of mind, and it's not weird, and it's not deep, and it's not heavy. Many people spend huge portions of the day in this fluid state of mind. So you want to have the sensitivity to know, where is this person? What mode of mind are they in? Analytical, critical, critical faculty, fluid, creative faculty, so I often call it. So you want to be able to watch, you want to be able to hear, you want to be able to listen, develop instincts for knowing that. That's a key aspect of mastering hypnosis. Of course, if you're nose down in a script book, reading a script and ignoring what's going on with the client, your sensory acuities are shut down, you're not going to be doing that. And there's a good chance, unless you have an incredibly compliant client, you're going to be mismatching all kinds of stuff with them. You're going to have no idea what's going on. So switch up your awareness. Develop the skill to switch up your awareness, because technically this is the essentials of becoming a master hypnotist. A master hypnotist will have incredible sensory acuity, and also not just sensory acuity, acuity of mind and understanding. Okay, it will be intelligent acuity, not just looking at blind signals. There'll be a certain amount of Sherlock Holmes style skill, if you like, in interpreting those signals that you're getting from people. There's a whole rabbit hole I could open up and go down here, but I'm not going to, because we're on a short webinar. So leading on from what I've just been talking about having your head down in script books and this kind of thing, I get a lot of people asking me about scripts. I think I may have recorded a video for the blog, which I haven't put out yet, and I'm going to put out soon. But I get a lot of people asking me, James, do you have a script for X or do you have a script for Y? It can be mildly frustrating, because I've said in many places how scripts do not hypnotize. You know, a script is not a hypnotist. Scripts do not create hypnosis, do hypnosis. They don't really do anything, you know. So real effective hypnosis mastery, always entails going beyond scripts. What I've got here as this point is not go beyond scripts, which I was going to put, is work in real time. Work in real time. What you are managing here is an unfolding dynamic. It's unfolding moment by moment by moment by moment. In every single moment, the future is wide open. Where things are going to go next in terms of the responses of the subject, this is why having that sensory acuity is important. Because where things are going to go next, you don't know. You don't know what's going to come up for the client. You don't know what direction things are going to go in. You don't know what you're going to get given to work with. I really love the physicist David Bohm's description of life being about participating in the unfolding. I often say creatively participating in the unfolding. Doing hypnosis is like a microcosm of that. You don't know what's going on. You're taming a wild horse. It's not easy, smooth, or predictable. Things are going to go all over the place. You need to be switched on and ready to take charge. Back to being a leader. You're always being the leader. So you are steering the flow moment by moment by moment. You are participating creatively in the unfolding of that particular hypnotic interaction that you are the leader of as the hypnotist. Okay, so work in real time. I just want to say, I'm not slagging off scripts entirely. I think hypnosis scripts can be really useful things as study tools. You know, if somebody writes out a hypnosis script, take it as a hypothetical of some, you know, let's imagine there's a client there that was created for, and let's imagine that actually it's absolutely perfect for them. Nothing mismatches them at all. It can be useful because you can study the script, you can study the language structures within the script. A good script will contain many, many good language structures. It may also contain many, many useful ideas that you may be able to use in a more free-form way. So exploring and studying scripts isn't a bad thing, but if you think that reading scripts is doing hypnosis, then, well, I'm not going to say that you can't do some effective hypnosis sessions by reading scripts, but you need a lot more luck on your side. Point number 4 on this is stay out of your head. And I've put here, stay out of your head and get into your client's head. I know from mentoring a lot of hypnotists, when people begin, they are often worried about a lot of stuff. They're fearful about a lot of stuff. They're worried about how they are coming across to the client. They're worried about whether it's going to go wrong. They're worried about whether they really know enough to actually be able to help the client. And they've got all this busy chattering, chit-chat going on in their head, and they get sucked into it. So they might be doing a good job of playing it cool on the surface, but they're like the proverbial duck that glides serenely across the water, but underneath the legs are going absolutely mad. Now, there's a problem with this fundamentally. If you get caught up in a lot of busy thinking, you sort of reasonably quietly panicking inside of your head. To a certain degree, you know, we're really smart. We're all exquisite readers of nonverbal communication, but we all do it at the unconscious level. Now, you want to take your client into a fluid state of mind. And if you're not in a fluid state of mind yourself, I'm not saying you can't, again, there's no hard and fast rule here. Plenty of people can be successful doing hypnosis whilst having a very busy mind, being caught up in their thinking. But you're going to really get a lot better when you get out of your head, when you fall out of your thinking and into being present in the moment and flowing with your skills and flowing with your understandings. Of course, you have to get there, and this is why one of my later points is about practice, really practicing stuff and embedding in stuff so you can just show up, boom, and do what you do. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff as well. One of the things I recommend that hypnotists do, and coaches and everybody who is going to be working with other human beings, actually all human beings, I'm going to say, I would recommend do this. I recommend people do deep work with themselves. They do deep work with themselves to resolve inner conflicts. They do deep work with themselves to come to terms with the aspects of themselves, with the truths that they fear might be truths about themselves. A lot of the time people are in struggle, they're in turmoil with themselves, and they're trying to micromanage other people's perceptions of them. They're trying to micromanage their own perceptions of themselves. It creates a lot of mental noise up here and pulls us away from our grounding and our ability to be present with people. So I would say get out of your head, learn to get out of your head, learn to resolve that stuff, learn to be able to fall out of your thinking and into flow and into your skills. And into your deeper understandings about what could be happening or unfolding right now. And I've also put here, get out of your head and get into your clients. Now, when I say get into your client's head, I don't mean be there neurotically wondering about what they might be thinking, which is what a lot of people do. This is one of the ways people create fear and anxiety for themselves, by neurotically wondering what that person might be thinking about you, might be thinking about your skills, might be thinking about hypnosis, might be thinking about the process. You can't ever know that, okay? You might be able to get some idea by asking them, but by trying to guess and fearing that they might be thinking some things that you can't handle, that's not getting into somebody's head. You might be trying to get into their head, but that's not really getting into their head. What I mean by getting into your client's head is going into this space whereby you almost see it, you almost feel it. My friend Michael Perez described this to me as it's like, he said, when he does hypnosis, it's like he goes into a lucid dream that the client shares. Now, when you go fully into that kind of a dream and you allow it to extend, I'm getting really kind of metaphysical in some ways here, but this isn't magical or supernatural. This is just a way of modeling your own, a way of setting up your own mental environment in a way that's very powerfully effective. So you go into a kind of a lucid dream and you extend it into the client, which means you are aware of where you are leading things. You are like the conductor of the orchestra, and you know how it is specifically you're moving the person's mind, where you're moving them from and where you're moving them to. Okay, so it's not trying to guess whether or not they might be thinking all sorts of awful things about you, or good things even. It's not about you. It's about them. So you stop worrying about how you're coming across and you start looking at what it is that you want to create for your client in terms of mind shifts, and you really focus on that place. It's refining your intention, moving yourself to the right place. That's the best way to think about this, actually, and I've done videos on this in other areas before, but it applies to hypnosis. Stop thinking and worrying about how you're coming across or what the other person's thinking, and start focusing on what it is you want to create for them in terms of mind shifts, and really go into that place and feel your way into that place. I'm going to suggest that is that's something that I think all real expert hypnotists, so to speak, do, and they do very, very naturally. Let me just correct that. When I say they do it naturally because they made it natural. Some people say practice makes perfect, but it doesn't really. Practice makes the unnatural natural. That's what it does. Okay, so you want to do enough practice to make the unnatural natural. So next point, and this relates to getting into their head, go deep into language. Go deep into language. I mean, right now, as a perfect example, I'm right here. My mind is whirling away. My mouth is flapping away. Words are cascading out, all outside of consciousness right now. When we speak most of the time outside of consciousness, we are unconsciously competent with our speech. So we never really reflect upon the specific impact of specific words. We don't spend a lot of time or take a lot of time thinking, how does this word move my mind? How does this word move somebody else's mind? What is the specific effect of this word or this combination of words? Now, I'm a big fan of going into this, going into the subtleties and going into the nuances of language. And at the same time, hypnosis isn't all about language and linguistics, but it's a very powerful area. When you get the sort of little subtle shifts around it, you can start to move people's minds easily because you know how certain words work. You know the difference between this and that, for example. So when somebody is talking about that problem, well, that's a better way than talking about this problem. So if someone's saying, well, this problem, I've had this problem for a long time, and you say, so whereabouts is that problem now? You see, that's a little piece of hypnotic language. It's only a simple thing. Whereabouts is that problem now? Because that is a dissociative word. It's over there. This is here. And whereabouts implies it's somewhere. And because it's that problem, it's not here. Well, it's somewhere else, right? So if you ask somebody a question like that, whereabouts is that problem now? Well, their mind has to move to make sense. Their mind has to restructure its internal representations in order to make sense of your language. Okay. Now, providing, going back to this idea about mode of mind, if you like, providing they're not in their analytical thinking, in their critical faculty, whatever, providing they really engage with that and they follow that, it's going to send them somewhere completely different from where they were. But in order to do that, you need to know how the specifics of language work. So there's a lot of opportunities to study that kind of stuff. There are many people that specialize in it. The first place to start is by looking at the old NLP models, things like the Meta model, the Milton model, and sleight of mouth to a certain degree. Christina Hall, she's fantastic with language, and John Overderth, Igor Ledachowski. There's lots of people who are fantastic with language. Always go deep with language. Learn to love language. Go deep into it. And here's the last thing about this. When I was, and I still do this, by the way, I was about to say, when I was learning hypnosis originally, but actually I still do this, I used to, and still do, but not so much as I used to, pick up hypnotic phrases from other people. I'd pick up hypnotic phrases from other hypnotists, sometimes from audios, sometimes from books, sometimes from my hypnosis friends I used to hang around. And I would really break down and analyze how the phrase might be working to move somebody's mind. And I would try it on myself. I would feel how it moved my mind. I would bring consciousness to bear on how those words moved my mind. And then I would try it out with other people. And I wouldn't just use the phrase as a stock phrase. I'd start pulling the elements out. And because I'd understand how they work, I could reconfigure them how I needed to, when I needed to, on the fly. So it's a very useful thing to do, like really geek out, get in and study language. I'm getting back in at the moment to studying language on deeper levels. So I make sure I spend half an hour a day at the moment studying language, and specifically from a hypnosis perspective. I'm not talking about the definitions of words in dictionaries, but how does that word move the mind? How does it impact the mind? How does it impact your internal organization, your representations, all of this kind of stuff? And that relates to the next point. I must have done these unconsciously in some incredibly useful order instead of just doing them randomly. It's explore from the inside out. Explore from the inside out. Hypnosis, your mind, everything. Explore it from the inside out. Now, I've just been talking about the impact of language, and I've been talking about how I would try the language on myself. I would imagine those words being said to me, or I would read them, or I would listen to them, and I would really focus in. I would bring consciousness to bear and notice what shifted and how it shifted as it shifted, as it was happening. So this is being on the receiving end, being on the inside, you see, and seeing what effect it has on you. Now I do this a lot, you see. I do a lot of self-development work. I'm a big fan of it. As a developmental coach, the most important thing I do to look after my skills, my abilities, my attributes as a developmental coach is to partake in developmental work, deep inner work. So I meditate. I will visit various skilled hypnotists, and I would experience what it is they do. And I will go into experience fully. I won't go in there going, well, let's see whether they're any good or not. I'll open my mind up and go fully with it, and I'll see the effects that it has on me. I'll do various processes on my self-developmental processes. I'm currently doing a lot of stuff looking at dreams and studying dreams and starting to look at lucid dreaming and stuff like that. Why am I doing that? Because so far as I'm concerned, the more experiences I have, the more I get to understand the human mind from a subjective perspective, from the inside out, and to understand personal transformation from a subjective perspective, the more I'm able to dream that lucid dream and pull other people into it. If I just look at it all from the outside in, and it's just all a bunch of words and a bunch of techniques and all this kind of stuff, I don't know. I don't have such a deep relationship with that stuff, so I can't be so deeply congruent with it. That's the way it works for me. So I always advocate. I mentor a lot of coaches. One of the things I see over and over again, this will relate to you as a hypnotist. It's going to relate to you as a hypnotist anyway, but I mentor a lot of coaches. And I see this over and over again. Many coaches are not quite sure how to sell themselves as a coach. They're not quite sure, not quite clear on what it is that they do necessarily. They've got some idea, they've got some vague, ambiguous stuff. They're never quite sure of the impact of their coaching. And sometimes they're coaching and they've got their coaching skills, they've done all their trainings and stuff like that. And sometimes they're coaching and they seem to be getting great results with clients and they're going, oh, good, it's working. And other times the client doesn't seem to be working out so well. So they're never really sure what it is that they do. They never really have that kind of certainty or grounding that what they do really, really, really works. Really works. Now, when I'm coaching, when I'm doing developmental coaching, I know the stuff that I do and the stuff that I use works. It really, really, really works. It's powerful. I know it's powerful because all the stuff I do, I've been through. I've been through all the processes I use. I've been through all the mind shifts I share. I have a deep, rich map of the human psyche, which is built from the inside out. Now, of course, many NLPers who might be watching this might say, but James, that's a fallacy. Just because that's how your reality is structured doesn't mean that's how other people's reality is structured. Okay? But that's only if you're working at the level of content. Essentially, we all have the same neurological kit. Every single human being has the same neurological kit. Pretty much. There may be some small genetic variances, but they're tiny and insignificant. Some people may have brain injuries and that kind of thing, and that may change things around. But even someone with a brain injury is still working with the same kit that's been injured or modified somehow, right? So there are certain principles upon which our minds and our psychology are built, which are true for all human beings. I'm talking at a level of process here rather than the level of content. One of the things I often say to people One of the things I often help people with during developmental coaching is becoming a better witness to their own processes. Now, when you become a better witness to your own processes, start to understand how your mind works on a process level. Well, because you have the same neurological kit as everybody else's mind works on the same process level. What they process may vary, okay? But how they process on a process level is going to be the same. They may have some personal preferences to use a bit of the kit a little bit more, and this bit of kit a little bit less, but we've got the same kit, right? It's what makes us human beings. And we operate by fundamental principles, okay? We're not just all completely different. So a lot of the time, it's useful to be aware of difference in worldview, difference in maps, difference in understandings and all of that. But when you start to understand the human mind, how it works on a processing level, that's going to really aid you. And the best way to do it is not from textbooks. It's to go inside, to explore from the inside out, to become a psychonaut, if you like. Now let me give you an example of this. Imagine you've got an astronaut. Imagine you've got somebody who was born in space on the International Space Station. If that thing's still floating up there, maybe they get a new one. And I know there are problems with this analogy because people need to be within a gravitational field in order to develop properly. But let's ignore that for a moment. Let's use this as a thought experiment and take some license with it. Imagine somebody is born out in space and they grow up there all the way to adulthood, and they're schooled there. And there's not much to do but study up there in space. They study, and they study deeply. And they study everything. They study physics especially. And they choose to really study gravity because it's a fascinating thing. They've kind of heard all about it. And it's interesting and so alien to them. But so they study gravity. And they read everything that is possible to read on gravity, and they watch videos of lectures on gravity, and they could lecture endlessly on gravity themselves. They know gravity, right, totally, completely, intellectually. And then one day they say, right, we're decommissioning the space station, so everyone has to move back to Earth. It's like, oh, okay, this is gonna be cool. So they get down in the pod, and it goes down to Earth, and as it gets closer and closer to the surface, they're like, oh my God, I feel weird. Ugh. Their face just starts drooping down and stuff. And then as soon as the pod lands, they just, somebody has to drag them out. There's drool running down their face. And they can't even lift their arm. They're like, what's going on? Their eyes feel all heavy, boo. And they're looking around at these people just moving effortlessly around. And even though they've studied everything there is to know about gravity from the outside in intellectually, they've got no experience or understanding on a deep embodied level of gravity. It is totally, totally, totally alien to them. Yet everyone else, all the Earth dwellers walking around effortlessly interacting with gravity, they have a deep embodied knowledge of gravity. Deep embodied knowledge. They couldn't give you a lecture on gravity. They couldn't say much more than like, well, stuff falls down when you let go of it. It's just, they don't even think when they lift up a coffee cup, you see, and take a drink. They don't think that they are utilizing their implicit deep understanding of gravity as they do that. So there's two ways of knowing, you see. And I would advocate, if you want to be great as a hypnotist, it's not a bad thing to learn about theories and stuff like that. That can be a really useful thing. It can be a bridge. It can be a stepping stone. But if you want to really start rocking as a psychoactive facilitator, as a hypnotist, as a facilitator of experience, as a, whatever it is, a mind-shifting coach, if you want to do that, explore from the inside out, become a psychonaut. It will make you wildly better at what you do. And you will have a knowledge about how what you do works that will make you rock solid when you show up with clients and when you show up with other people, okay? And that's worthwhile. You know, that's a valuable thing. I don't know, about 6 months ago, I shared an email from Jamie Smart, and it's a marketing email, right? And I shared it with a whole bunch of friends. Why would I share a marketing email? Because it had within it a line which was profoundly true. To me, it seemed profoundly and obviously true, where Jamie said every six-figure coach you have ever met has a grounding that you can feel the moment you meet them. Okay? And I think this is true of excellent hypnotists. They have a grounding you can feel the moment you meet them. And where does that grounding come from? It comes from a deep, direct, personal knowledge of what it is that they are working with in that moment. So become a psychonaut, explore from the inside out, and not just hypnosis, by the way. You know, I'm booked on a yoga nidra workshop soon because I'm looking to explore that. I'll do any kind of guided visualization stuff, various meditation techniques, lucid dreaming, dream analysis. I'm not advocating psychedelic drugs, although I have experimented with those way back in the past. But anything that you can do to get inside of your mind and start really getting into that psychoactive space, that's going to assist you in becoming a wild and creative hypnotist. So, get mentoring. This is the penultimate point. In fact, let me hang back on that one. Let me just move to practice first. One that was going to be after that. Practice. Practice. Practice, 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 practice. Just practice. Hypnotize your backside off and get your backside hypnotized off. Do it from both sides, from the outside in and the inside out. But get in there. The more time you spend with this, the better you will get. Here's a simple formula for you. Spending high quality, relaxed, focused time with hypnosis developing practices or hypnosis skills developing practices is the only way to develop your hypnosis skills. So if you are not spending time with the pragmatic, practical doing side of things, you are not gonna improve. So imagine somebody says they want to learn the piano, and they buy a whole bunch of books from Amazon on piano playing, and they book themselves into numerous piano playing seminars where the piano player would demonstrate some piano playing, and maybe now and then they get to tinkle a few keys here and there. And they go to piano concerts and they read up on the history of piano playing and all of this kind of stuff. They've been doing this for years, and one time they find themselves at a party. There's a piano there, and one of their friends says, "Look, hey, come and give us a tune. You've been studying piano for many years." Oh, I'll sit down. Can't do anything because they've just been consuming information about piano playing and not spending any time with transformative activities. Practice is transformative activity. Receiving hypnosis, going inside of yourself, that is transformative activity. That's the kind of activity you want to spend time with, okay? And I know that it can be challenging to find the opportunities to do that. You know, one of my earliest videos was on practicing on friends and family. They're kind of the worst people to practice hypnosis with in many ways. In other ways, they're not. But that's what people initially do. They badger their friends and family. I remember badgering my wife all the time. Can I just, I was badgering her relentlessly. She had no desire to be hypnotized, and certainly not by me, of all people. So it was difficult to get people to practice with it. My solution for that, I set up an NLP group when I first did NLP practitioner, NLP practice group. Why? So I could get to practice. It was for me to practice. I set up numerous other practice groups, and sometimes they run for short times, they're informal, sometimes longer times, hypnosis practice groups. I'd look around for other people running hypnosis practice groups. I used to go join those. When I found out about the street hypnosis scene down in London, for me it was, ooh, here's a great opportunity to practice. And that was a fantastic thing as well, because I met loads of other hypnotists who were influential with me, you know, on how I do hypnosis. When I did my clean language training, one of the excellent things about the clean language training that was offered by the Clean Change Company, I did 20 days of that training, really, really heavily practice orientated. I did so many hours of psychoactive facilitation through that training, you know, and really focusing on skills, not focusing on learning more and more and more and more and more techniques, keeping it simple, but focusing on deepening skills. It was very valuable experience for me. So find opportunities to practice, create opportunities to practice. And remember, practicing is about being bad. It's about being rubbish. It's about making mistakes. It's about hitting the edges. It's not about trying to show off. So be willing to fail when you practice as well, you know. Now, the next point is get mentoring. Get mentoring. I don't know how you can do this without getting mentors. I mean, some people do it. Some people get off the ground quite quickly, but they never really get to the bigger game, the higher levels of the game. People get the basics down by studying on their own and practicing. But if you want to get to the higher levels, you need a mentor. You need someone who's going to show you the way, someone who's going to answer your questions, help you shift your perspectives, help you work through your sticking points, all of that kind of stuff. This is essential stuff. I'm going to say you don't just need a mentor. The truth of the matter is the more mentors you have over time, the better. I mean, you don't want to have like hundreds in one go. But over the course of your development, you want to work with mentors and work with different mentors. Now, mentors can take many forms. I've had many, many mentors, and some of them have been formal mentors, where I've had a personal mentoring relationship, and I've spent designated amounts of time with them coaching me, showing me things, teaching me things, answering my questions, coaching me through my sticking points, as I said before. Other mentors I've had are informal mentors. They're friends of mine who are brilliant. I often mention Jürgen Rasmussen. I've learned a phenomenal amount from Jürgen. You know, so I would see him as a mentor in that respect. He might be surprised to hear that because we chat on Skype and have enjoyable conversations. But to me, he's a mentor in that respect, but in a different way. It's an informal relationship. Some mentors to me, I've never even met, but I'll study them deeply. I will study them deeply. So I got very interested in William Glasser not so long ago, and I studied him quite deeply. I didn't just read his books. I really recommend his book, Counseling with Choice Theory. I really enjoyed that book, and I didn't just read that book. I went in and I studied what he was doing. I did what I call speculative semantic modeling, which meant I listened to his words and picked up clues about how he might be or how he's probably seeing the world and making sense of things. So I could try those on for myself and see how they work for me, and try them on in coaching context and see how they work for me. So William Glasser gets to be a mentor to me. You know, there are mentors can take many forms, but engage them, start to understand that process. And formal mentors that you can work with one-on-one are going to be the best. Now, here's another thing I'm going to say about mentors. There's never going to be anyone, you will never meet anyone that will give you all the pieces of the puzzle. You will not ever meet anyone who will give you all the pieces of the puzzle. When I was studying Tai Chi many years ago, originally, at one point I had 5 different Tai Chi instructors. And I was seeing, you know, I was 5 days a week, I was studying with a different person, doing Tai Chi. And there were some problems with that because they had conflicting ideas about how it should be done. And I had to remember with each one I was working with, right, you know, I had to align with them, because the big idea at the time was, well, you shouldn't have 5. You should kowtow to one and study their ways, go in deep. And there's something to be said for that, but don't get stuck there. You want to move on at some point. But I had 5 in one go. Now, my main teacher, my main mentor, if you like, and he really was a mentor rather than a teacher, because this guy was actually an appalling teacher. He was really awful. You know, his teaching would be just to sort of go, well, just do it. You just sort of do it. That was the sum of his teaching, really, and taking you through some exercises. But he was a fantastic mentor in that he was good. I mean, he was really good, and he was the template for me for how Tai Chi should be, how it needed to be. He was embodying, he was manifesting the skills that that I wanted to emulate, but I couldn't get all the pieces of the puzzle. I couldn't learn from him how to do what he did, because so much of it was outside of conscious awareness for him. He couldn't access everything that he knew, you see. No expert, no one who's brilliant at what they do can access everything they know about what they do. Some of it's conscious and some of it's not. And some of the stuff they're conscious of is going to be, you know, the map is not the territory. They're giving you a map, they're not giving you the territory. So I had these 4 other teachers who I was learning different elements from, and they were not nearly as good as this guy. But in many ways, they were better teachers, and they all had different pieces of the jigsaw, and I really progressed very, very fast at the time by getting all these different perspectives. And I've always taken this view forward, going forward. When I did Hypnosis Without Trance originally, I started the blog up. The way I was doing hypnosis back then, at the time, and the way I do hypnosis now is a bit different. I mean, it's transcended and included what I used to do. But the way I was doing it at the time was a strange blend of old school direct hypnosis, of clean language, and more to the point, the skills that I'd learned through clean language, through NLP, and through various other skills I'd learned from magic and mentalism. So those are different areas. They all came together. I had mentors in all of those areas. So I just don't think you can do it without mentors. These days, I like to move fast. I'm 41 years old. There's a lot I want to do in my life. There's a lot of depth I want to bring to my skills and understanding. So I pay for mentors now, and usually have several on the go, paid mentors at any one time. That's how it works for me, because I want to accelerate. You know, I want to accelerate the deepening of my understanding and the development of my skill further. So get mentoring. And the last one, I've talked about this already, the path of mastery. Keep deepening your knowledge. Keep deepening your knowledge. And don't get too attached to hypnosis, will be my recommendation here. Because ultimately, hypnosis is just a word. It's just a word. Beyond that word is a load of really interesting stuff about how the human mind works and how we can, through the use of language and communication, influence people's experience. So if you take away the word, if you make a rule that says, well, I'm interested in hypnosis and I study hypnosis, so I need to go and find hypnotists that I can learn from. Nothing wrong with learning from hypnotists, good idea. But who is it who is outside of the world of hypnosis that also knows an awful lot about minds, human minds, and how to move them in interesting ways? If you are, as I am, you see, because hypnosis for me isn't the be-all and end-all by any means. In fact, I've often said this before, I'm an accidental hypnotist. I never set out at any point in my life to become a hypnotist, even though that is what I'm largely known as by many, many people these days. I never set out to become a hypnotist. I was interested in human beings. I was interested in how our minds work. I was interested in communication. I was interested in influence. And most of all, I was interested in personal transformation, deep personal transformation. Those are the things that interested me. And I explored hypnosis as part of exploring a broader picture and learned a hell of a lot from it, and deeply appreciate everything I've learned from hypnosis. And still, you know, I can't step away from it because it's inherently fascinating and there's always interesting things to learn. So I take what I learned from hypnosis outside of hypnosis and apply it in other areas. And I also take what I get from other areas and bring it into hypnosis. And if you really want to be a master of hypnosis, one of the things about, I think, hypnosis mastery, all master hypnotists, if you like, they have their style. They have their way of doing it. They do it their way. No two hypnotists are the same. Okay, they might be at the start of their journey if they come out of the same hypnosis school, very similar. But if they hang in there, if they keep deepening their knowledge, then you know, things are going to change, things are going to evolve, and you're going to ultimately evolve into, as I said at the beginning, the best hypnotist that you can be, the unique hypnotist that is you, that does it your way with your set of understandings and attributes. Excuse me. So keep deepening your knowledge, stay on the path of mastery, and enjoy it. You know, don't be in a hurry to get anywhere. This is another thing people go, oh. I remember when I was teaching hypnosis, when I was teaching Tai Chi, I mean, many years ago, I had a guy walk in to my class, and he walked right up to me and he said, I want to be a Tai Chi master. I want to be a Tai Chi master. And I was kind of taken aback by this. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, why do you want to be a Tai Chi master? He said, because it's just what I want. I mean, I want that more than anything. I said, okay, well, let's begin. And throughout the class, he showed a lot of impatience. He was not willing to let go of current ideas when doing two-person stuff like push hands, which I introduced him to early on, which is something was rare for me as a Tai Chi teacher. Many Tai Chi teachers don't, but I'd introduced push hands straight away. And I really did my best to introduce him to Tai Chi and give him a flavor of what it was going to be like for him. He never came back, the guy that wanted to be the Tai Chi master. And I don't know this for sure, but if I had to put money on it, I would guess that he probably never became a Tai Chi master or even stuck with it for very long at all. You see, because if you're end gaining all the time, which means you're trying to get through your developmental process to get to mastery, you will scupper yourself because you will not be able to be present with high quality learning and exploration. You won't be able to bring true curiosity and joy to what you do. You'll be in get through to get to. I've got to get through this so I can get to the place where I'm a hypnosis master. So hence the path of mastery rather than the path to mastery. Be present with your development. Be present with your exploration. Be present with your practice. Be present with your clients. And enjoy knowing that slowly but surely, every time you show up, every time you engage with the process, your abilities and your skill will be deepening subtly over time. And at some point, you're going to look back and go, wow, look at what I can do now. Look at how much fun this is now. Look at how easy this is now. You'll enjoy surprising yourself with your own creativity. Now, so there's my 9 points. I'm going to wrap those up. I talked about mentoring here. I mentor a lot of people one-on-one, and there's a whole bunch of other people who would like me to mentor them, but they are not in the position financially to engage me one-on-one at the moment. Now, if you're watching this webinar live, there's a little box down on the left-hand side. You will find that, just navigating through a few windows here, you will find that there's a link there to something called the Hypnosis Mastery Developing Group, which I'm launching. And this is to give people the opportunity to get access to me as a mentor. And I'm not saying that I am the definitive mentor by any means, but I've done a lot of mentoring and helped a lot of people develop as hypnotists. And I spend a lot of time exploring hypnosis and developing myself as a hypnotist as well. So I can help you. I can help you if you want to develop as a hypnotist. In fact, I'm not even going to tell you that. You already know, if you're here watching this, you probably know enough about me to be able to sense as to whether I am a person who you would like to have help you become a better hypnotist. So I've created the Hypnosis Mastery Developing Group in order to enable people to get access to me as a mentor. Not in the same way as it would be one-on-one. It can't quite be like that. But it's a group that operates around 4 pillars. Okay, it's all about assisting you in becoming the very best hypnotist you can be. The 4 pillars this group is built around. It's a private members group, so nobody who's outside of it gets to get in and get any of this stuff. Number one, you get full Q&A support. So as you explore hypnosis and influential communication, there will inevitably be many questions that come up for you. Questions whose answers will make a big difference to you, okay? As a member of the developing group, you will get to have all of your questions addressed and answered via an exclusive live monthly Q&A, okay? I will be doing a monthly Q&A, which will be as long as it needs to be to answer the questions. You don't have to be live on that monthly Q&A. You can be, and you can ask live questions, or you can submit your questions via the group forum. There's an exclusive group forum in there as well, which I'll tell you about in a moment. So anything you've got a sticking point on, anything you want to understand more deeply, you can ask me. I will give you my perspective. I will give you my answer. I will give you suggestions for coaching yourself through sticking points as well, which is an important aspect. The second element of the group is an exclusive monthly topic-focused webinar, okay? So once a month, I'm going to be creating a webinar on a specific topic relating to hypnosis or influential communication. It sometimes may broaden out slightly to just how the mind works, because we're interested in that one. We're interested in influencing the mind. And these webinars will be driven by the areas of interest that are emerging from the group. Sometimes it might be that somebody asks a question which is going to evolve into a seriously worthwhile webinar for people to have. Sometimes I may choose things that I want to share because I think they're things that people are missing or overlooking and they could do with understanding more deeply. So we've got the full Q&A support, the monthly Q&A, plus a monthly exclusive webinar going deep into a particular topic. The third pillar of this is a peer support and topic exploration forum. I have a fantastic forum system up and running within the developing group area where people can ask the questions they want to ask. That will be where the questions get asked and get answered in the Q&A. They can discuss topics and issues with peers there, because peer support's a really important thing. The idea of this developing group obviously is to have access to me as a mentor, but you will also have access to each other as well. In a supporting context, and I would encourage people to set up practice buddy groups, okay, which you can do through the forum, and also engage in co-coaching as well, which means you can take turns coaching each other through stuff either specific to hypnosis or just around deepening your grounding. If you're interested in developing yourself as a change worker, because much of the material we'll be covering within this group will be around developing change work skills as well. You'll get the opportunity to buddy up with people and practice your change work skills with them. They get to benefit from the shifts they make. And if you're on the receiving end as the client, you get to benefit from doing some developmental work for yourself. So the opportunity is there to find practice buddies and co-coaches. This is a really important thing I want for this group. I want to get this kind of cohesion going. Not everybody who participates is going to want to do that. Okay, people choose their level of engagement. But if you want to find practice buddies and if you want to find co-coaches and co-coaching opportunities, that's something that you can arrange via the group, and I will be encouraging and leading people in connecting with those possibilities. The last pillar of this group is an ever-deepening resource archive. Now, that archive has already begun. Okay, I haven't launched this group yet. Literally, I opened this group to the last minute rush just before this webinar, you know, so no one's in this group yet, but already in the archive there are 30 lessons on fundamental aspects of NLP available there. Okay, 30 lessons. They're written lessons, fully illustrated where that's relevant, and there are also another 30, approximately 30 lessons that will be added to that. So there's going to be 60 lessons in there. I'll be adding those across the next month. There's 30 in there already. 60 lessons on the fundamentals of neurolinguistic programming, which is not something I've ever taught publicly before outside of when I used to teach NLP practitioner. So those resources are in there. There's also a multi-part video program on transformative conversation, which was recorded across a 2-day seminar. There are there is an Entheos area where I am sharing all of the Entheos webinars that I did, which are on different aspects of influential communication and self-development. And I also have an area where I'm sharing all the interesting talks I've done, which will have about 6 different interesting talks, including the Way of the Hypnotist talk, and a lot of the talks around self-transformation and assisting others in making personal change. So an extensive resource archive, which is there's only just the nut of it there at the moment, but those things I've just mentioned are in there. And when I say it's an ever-deepening resource archive, the reason being is because monthly there'll be more and more content added, peripheral content, but also the content of the Q&A support calls and the webinars, if that makes sense. So that's the developing group. I'm really looking forward to it. It's something that's very exciting for me to do. I know I put the video up on YouTube about it, I don't know, some 6 weeks ago probably, and I've had people emailing me all the time saying, what's this developing group thing? When are you going to be starting it? Well, I'm starting it now, and we're ready to roll with it. So it's up, it's ready to go. Literally, I just put it live before this webinar. And you can start, if you want, if this is something you're interested in. I'm not here to give you a hard sell on this. This is making an offer to you, providing the facility, because I want to be able to support you in your development, but you may choose a different path, and that's absolutely cool too. But if you want to get on board with this, for the first month at the moment, it's just £12.50. That's it, £12.50. It kind of sounds weird, me saying that, £12.50. Somebody the other day said, "Oh, James, you're really expensive as a coach." You know, so I'm not that expensive as a coach, actually. But I'm used to telling people my coaching fees. So when I say something like £12.50, it sounds really small. But I want to get a lot in there for that. You know, this is the point of this. This is for people who would like to engage me as a mentor, but they're not in a financial position at the moment to do so one-on-one. Okay. Just £12.50 for that first month. If you go, yeah, that was cool. You know, you can look at all those articles, all the stuff in the resource area, learn as much as you want, and then you can just go, yeah, you know, that's not for me. Or if you're loving it and it's really serving you deeply and you're getting involved and you're engaging via the forum and all of that, I'd love to have you continue. And from that, you know, from the first month onwards, it's £27 per month. So there's my pitch at the end, and I think I've covered all the points on here. I've gone a little longer than I wanted to. I wanted to do 45 minutes and 15 minutes of questions. So I'm going to toggle through and open up the dashboard here, if I can find it. Here we are, opening up the dashboard. And I want to find the questions. So I'm on Webinar Ignition, by the way. Those of you who joined me on my last webinar, I'm really hoping that the streaming is somewhat better. And here I am. I'm checking the questions. Crikey, here we go. Total questions. More questions than I thought. Except, of course, when I click the link here, nothing's opening up. Okay, I've got 20 questions here, except I can't see them. Here we go. Got it. So question number 1 here. Hi, James and Vinny. The ghost of Vinny, the spirit of Vinny, we shall say, has been here, even though obviously Vinny wasn't able to connect with the call. He says, hi, James and Vinny, what is the best way to know what to say without using scripts to get the changes you want? I do have some of James's products, but sometimes just get lost in what to say if I have to keep talking. Okay, so this relates to this point about inside out. Okay, it relates to the point about inside out. When you've explored from the inside out, you know where it is that you want to move somebody's mind. When you get deep into the art, you know what it is that you want to do. You know, so the question says, what do you say without using scripts to get the changes you want? Well, the first thing is to know what changes you want. Now, if the change is a change in terms of, oh, well, I want them to change from biting their nails to not biting their nails, that's too big a chunk. It's too big a chunk. You could go for a direct suggestion and say, from now on, you will just feel relaxed and your fingers will become more and more comfortable as your nails grow, and you enjoy that. And you may look and allow those nails to grow. You know, you can just make something up. You can riff something. Actually, just that thing I did there, right? I just made that up, okay? As a direct suggestion kind of a thing. How did I do that? How did I do that? Let's do some live modeling on myself right now. I went there in my mind. I imagined what it would be like for my fingertips to feel good and for my nails to be growing and for me to feel good about my nails growing. And I imagined what it would be like to look at my nails and be filled with good feelings, knowing that those nails are growing and becoming more and more strong, right? So this idea of that I shared before about lucidly dreaming, so to speak, and I mean that metaphorically, but going into an imagined world and allowing that to drive your languaging. If you understand hypnotic languaging, then the imagination will just drive it and the languaging will flow around it. That's for kind of direct suggestion stuff, very direct stuff. But much of the time, depending on the nature of the problem, what I'm going to want is a shift in understanding. So I'm going to work at a different level. I'm not necessarily working at the level of behavior. So I'm going to be working at a level of a shift of understanding. So I'm going to be asking them questions. Where is their understanding at the moment? I want to listen to their map of the world. And I want to start hearing what's within their language. See, this is a big area. It's what I call Sherlock Holmes coaching. Sherlock Holmes goes to the crime scene and picks up the clues. And he deduces what has happened from picking up the clues. When I work in a coaching or change work capacity, one of the aspects, one of the ways I'm working is what I call Sherlock Holmes coaching, which means I sit down and I ask the client about their situation. And I'm picking up clues. I'm picking up clues as to how they are structuring their reality and how they are creating, you know, the reality tunnel they're stuck in. So I'm like Sherlock Holmes. I'm kind of solving the crime. I'm seeing how they're holding their reality tunnel together. And then I get some pretty good ideas about what needs to shift, which ideas are likely to be the key operational concepts. That's the level that I work at. If you're coming into hypnosis right now and you're at the front end of your journey, you're going to go, whoa, hang on a second, James, that's deep stuff. Now, if you've seen Hypnotherapy Heresy, which was the last program I released, it's called Hypnotherapy Heresy, Making Hypnotherapy Simple. I don't talk about any of that stuff that I do. I don't talk about Sherlock Holmes coaching. I don't talk about how I'm modeling out their reality. I don't talk about any of that stuff. I keep it really, really simple. Now, really, really simple doesn't mean it's going to work every time. Obviously, the simpler you keep it, the more basic you keep it, the less you can do. So I'm focusing in Hypnotherapy Heresy on really basic things that you can do that are almost always going to create useful effects. And one of those things is simply shifting state. I talked earlier about modes of mind. If you can shift somebody out of their critical faculty and shift them into a more fluid, creative mind, if you can just do that and then give some suggestions around coming up with some solutions, well, they're going to be thinking differently from how they were before. I'm not saying it's the be-all and end-all of how to do change work, but they're going to be thinking differently. So what to say without using scripts is going to be based upon your understanding. It might be based on models. With Hypnotherapy Heresy, I have an underpinning model I share, which is based around knowing how to do a simple timeline journey, knowing how to do an early learning set, knowing how to do a new behavior generator, knowing how to alter states in useful ways. Just simple things. And they are underlying structures that that enable you to know what you're doing. Okay? If you know what you're doing, you don't need scripts. If you rely on scripts, you'll never know what you're doing. Okay? That's the thing that I fear. So that's how you know what to say. You have an underlying model or an underlying structure. And that might be something formal you've learned on an NLP training or something like that, or it might be based on your own evolving and deepening understanding of human beings and how they work and what needs to shift for this particular person. So, so thank you for that. That was from Aid, by the way. Thank you, Aid. So this question is from B. Henning, I'm guessing from the email address. Any suggestions for techniques that deal with terminal illness and loss of a loved one, as these are both final scenarios? All roads seem to lead back to that. So yes, any techniques? I don't have techniques for dealing with loss or for dealing with loved ones. I don't have any techniques at all, really. And that's probably a lie. There's probably some techniques that I may use from time to time, but generally I don't work with techniques, and certainly not issue-specific techniques. I don't really have issue-specific techniques that I ever work with. There are some coaching tools that I will use. So if I want to help somebody deal with terminal illness, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be interesting to me there. If they're afraid, what's that fear about? You know, what's that fear about? What's their understanding of death? How do they have death modeled in their map of the world? You know, how do they have it? If they've got a very scary version of death, is it terrifying to them? Well, if it is, that's what we want to move. That's what we want to shift. That's what we want to loosen. We want to change their understanding of death. So that might be an issue around terminal illness. Another issue might be pain. There might be pain involved with it. If there's pain, you might want to do some work on the pain, which might be around changing the relationship with pain. If I'm using pain, I suppose you could say this is a technique thing. If I'm doing pain stuff, which I very rarely do, because it's not, I'm a developmental coach. I don't do pain control stuff. But I will use more sub-modalities and active imagination-based stuff. I'd recommend the book Monsters and Magical Sticks. Most of the pain-based stuff I use is based on that kind of idea. And changing the relationship with pain. Also bringing people's attention to it, having them be aware of it as a sensation, and reframing their or helping them shift their meaning making around the sensation. You can do simple things around teaching breathing techniques and stuff as well, teaching mindfulness, because the more relaxation, the more presence they have in their body, and the less they struggle with it, the easier it's going to get. There was something else there, loss of a loved one. So loss of a loved one, again, there's going to be all similar issues around that. What is it that's creating the problem for them? Is it regret that they didn't say something? Is it regret that they left things on a bad note? Are they sad because they're never going to see this person again? In which case, you know, well, they're going to need to come to terms with that. So how can you coach them on coming to terms with that? How can you coach them? When you can ask them gently, you know, at what point do you think you'll be ready to move on from this? You know, simple questions like that, simple coaching questions, gently, being aware. I talked about being real time, work in real time, learn to lead, but learn to pace as well. Be sensitive to where the person's at. Look at where it's going to be useful to move them to. You know, it's going to be useful to move them to some of those old platitudes, you know, everything moves on, life goes on, all of that. You would never say anything so awful as that. I would hope not. But underneath them, there are some fundamental truths. In Buddhism, they talk about impermanence. Impermanence is an important thing. All things must pass. All things must pass. In Zen Buddhism, they say it's only when you realize the precious vase is already broken that you can be free. Okay, so there's something in this person's philosophy, the way they're making sense of it, the way they're understanding it, that's either causing them pain, or have you ever heard the common everyday expression, well, they were very philosophical about it? Think about that. Take that literally for a moment. What does it mean to be philosophical about something? What it means is to create understandings about something that are more useful. So if somebody is struggling to get over something, help them create more understandings around it that are more useful. So Next question up. I'm going to go through a few of these. I've not considered these questions ahead of time, so I don't have pre-prepared answers. Hopefully some of the perspectives I'm sharing, they're not definitive answers, but will contain value within them. Hi, James. Apart from learning skills to be a hypnotist, where is the best place to start truly putting those skills into practice in more depth? Family and friends can naturally be a good starting point, but I feel I have studied hypnosis for a while now, but I can't really seem to be able to go beyond the basics as I don't have any subject to practice with in real depth. Any suggestions? Yes, I do have suggestions. Number one, you could go do the street hypnosis thing, which I understand many people are not interested in and find unpalatable, and there can be a number of reasons for that. So that's suggestion number one. Suggestion number two is create practice groups, get on Meetup, start finding people who are also interested in hypnosis and start creating practice groups like that. Number three, I remember early on for me, I still had a real job. I worked in an office. There was an intranet message board. I put an advert up on the intranet message board saying, newly trained hypnotist, come along and have your fears or phobias addressed. So started doing simple change work around phobias and that kind of stuff, stopping smoking, that kind of thing. Oh, by the way, I was very bad at it to start with, but that's okay because I was practicing. And initially I wasn't taking any money from people either. Some people say never work free. I did. For the first 2 months, I saw quite a lot of clients and I didn't charge a penny. So there was a great learning curve there. I'm thinking about Andy Austin right now, who, so the story goes, when he first started learning hypnosis, he was working in a hospital and he put up a message on the hospital notice board saying, trainee hypnotist looking for victims or something like that, your safety is not assured. And supposedly he got quite a good response from that, quite a lot of people. Yeah, so there are many opportunities. You know what? There are people all over the place. You go out, you walk through town, there are people everywhere. You have friends, you have family. Do you meet new people all the time? Do you go to parties? Do you go to bars? When you meet new people, what is it that you say that you do? What is it you say that you do? I have a friend of mine whose main job is an electrician. He is also a hypnotist on the side and he sees clients. But, you know, from way early on, before he was seeing clients, when he was still practicing with people, every time he met someone new, he'd say, I'm an electrician and a hypnotist. You know, when he'd be out working in businesses, doing electrics and stuff, or working in people's houses, he'd be talking about hypnosis, letting people know he was a hypnotist. And so a lot of practice opportunities got created. So you can always find practice opportunities. Here's a question for you. If you're missing practice opportunities, if you are not connecting with people to practice with, what is it that you're doing to keep those people out and keep those people away? Because we live on a planet with 7 billion people on it. So really, there are people to practice with everywhere, but I'm going to guess that for some reason you're hanging back from approaching some of those people or connecting with some of those people to practice with. So what is it that you're doing inside of your head? What's the thing you're telling yourself that says, well, I can't practice with that person, or that would be inappropriate, or whatever? Or as I've just mentioned, feel free to join the developing group, and there'll be people in the forum there who are also looking for people to practice with. So please do join the developing group and use that as a resource. So that was a question from Dindy. So thank you, Dindy, for asking that. Hello, James and Vinny. Vinny in spirit again. Can you tell me your opinion about having a clear goal a person can have? You see the positive. Yes, sorry, I'm shocking at reading. Yes, I see the positive that it can give, a very clear point to look at. And by this way, you can walk to reach your goal. The negative side of it, I also encounter is people are too straight in their way. I'm not sure what the question is. Ivar, I'm not quite making sense of your English here. So so I don't really know how to answer the question. Goals are useful things. I don't like goals, really, to be truthful with you. I prefer to have vision rather than goals. Okay, vision is more flexible. If you have a goal and it ends up being a target, then you're always trying to hit it, and things change across time, and the target may become inappropriate. You may never hit the target. You may get attached to hitting the target, and it starts to mess with you psychologically. I prefer to have a vision that's going to inform my action right now, and I'm ready to revise that vision at any point. I want that vision to serve me in the moment. I want it to inspire me right now. I want it to excite me right now. I want it to get me up and get me moving right now. If it's not doing any of those things, if a goal or a vision or whatever you're talking about, if it's not serving you right now, forget it, drop it. There's no rule in the universe that says you must focus on goals. One of my clients at the moment is really into shooting. And he was talking about the difference between shooting rifles and shotguns. He said, when you shoot a shotgun, you just look at the target and point. And when you shoot a rifle, you don't look at the target. You look at the sight of the rifle, just this tiny point on the rifle. And this is an excellent metaphor, because sometimes it's really useful to focus on the goal, and sometimes it's really useful to focus on the process. And sometimes focusing on the goal is the worst thing that you can possibly do. And sometimes focusing on the process is the worst thing you can possibly do. But if you develop internal sensory acuity for yourself to know whether what you're doing right now is serving you, then it doesn't matter, because you can use goals or vision where it's useful and where it serves you, and you can drop it when it's not serving you. You can focus on the task in hand, i.e. focus on the process when it's serving you, and you can drop it when it's not. I often contrast projects versus practices as two ways of working when I coach people around productivity, projects and practices. I used to have a bias towards practices because some people work really well with projects, and even sometimes I work really well with projects. Now, project is where you have an outcome and you put the steps in place to get to it. Practices are where you carve out time on a regular basis to show up inside of it and spend time with a process, and the results emerge. They're two very different ways of working, and they're both effective, and they can both be ineffective as well. So the trick is to have the acuity to see when what you're doing is serving you versus when it's not. Kevin Bryden says, is the event still on? Yes, it is. It's on. I'm hoping, it would be really horrible if none of this is recorded. Here's a question from Vinny. Hey, it's Vinny. That link that you sent me allows me to view it, not participate. I could just post some questions here. So Vinny was here in spirit and is here in spirit, but not here in person, alas. And that's my fault for sending the wrong link to him. So what's the most important thing a hypnotist must know? That's a good question, Luther. Thank you very much. I don't know the answer to that, the most important thing that a hypnotist must know, but I'm going to go with whatever pops into my mind now. And I think the most important thing that a hypnotist must know is you do not control anybody's mind. You do not control anybody's mind. You are a facilitator. You are an influencer. Hypnosis is not about control. It's about subtly nudging a complex system in interesting directions. And when people think it's all about control and they buy into the myth of there being some special magic words or some special process or some special anything that makes things happen absolutely in a specific way, then they're in a whole world of trouble, because they're going to find themselves confused and disappointed and let down, or they're going to do what some hypnotists I know, some old school power hypnotists I know do, which is put the blinders on and ignore they negatively hallucinate every failure so as they can maintain their illusion of being absolute mind control Svengalis. You know, and don't think that hypnosis is any the less powerful because of that. It just means it's subtler. It means it's more about influence and steering the unfolding and the flow, rather than absolutely being able to control things and make things happen in specified ways. That's why scripts are not effective. If you could just get the recipe and it would work, then scripts would be fine. But sadly, that isn't the way it works. I think happily that isn't the way it works, because it makes hypnosis a much richer, much deeper, much more interesting thing. And you know what? you'll grow more through learning it than you ever would through just reading some scripts of people or using some mind control techniques, quote unquote. I've got one from James at 7 p.m. GMT. I can see videos not been set up yet. That's probably because I didn't get the code in until 30 seconds past 7 or whatever. I'm guessing it's running now because Vinny sent me a thing saying he could view it but not participate. I really hope this has been running. I really hope this has been flowing. How to work with people when SC is blocked, subconscious, I'm guessing that's referring to. How to work with people when the subconscious is blocked. I mean, I try to use a regression, and all the time the person only can saw himself alone and nothing else. Okay, so here's the thing. Maybe that's not the right approach for that person. Maybe regression, there's an old NLP maxim that says if what you're doing isn't working, do something else, anything else, okay? So if regression isn't working for somebody and they're blocking that, just back away from it. Do something else. Use something different. Go in a different direction. That's how I would do it. Again, it's this point about it's not mind control. This stuff isn't mind control. You can't say, here's my regression process and it's going to work like a sausage machine, and you put the person in the one end and they come out as a different kind of sausage on the other end. It doesn't work like that. So how to work with people when the subconscious mind is blocked? It's be flexible. Feel your way in. Go via a different route. So Diana says, the link and the video's not been set up yet. I'll be really cheesed off if this hasn't recorded. It must be recording because it says from Pat. Pat's asking, very cool how you tie in the martial arts. And again, I was talking earlier about the things that influenced my style of hypnosis, and what I didn't mention was martial arts. My martial arts training is a massive influence on how I do hypnosis, particularly stuff around more tactile-based stuff like handshake inductions and body rocking and stuff like that. How I did the more physical stand-up stuff, the more street stuff. My martial arts training has a massive influence on that. So thank you, Pat. So Don says you might want to check out remote viewing to open up more exploration in consciousness. It is very cool. Right, so I'm guessing Don's keyed in here to me talking about exploring things from different perspectives. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do. One of the things I explored at one point was photo reading. And I learned a lot of really useful stuff from photo reading. I never learned to photo read. I'm still a little bit skeptical about it. I know I've upset people by saying that before, so I'm saying that cautiously. But nonetheless, I learned phenomenal useful things from studying the photo reading that really helped open up some doorways in my mind with regard to hypnosis. So this is the point about keep deepening your knowledge. It's well worth doing. Hi James, was wondering if you had a recommended reading list. I do have a few recommended reading lists. I've got one somewhere on the blog from a while back, which was a sort of basic hypnosis recommended reading list. I have a video somewhere on the blog, a video version of a different recommended reading list. I also have my apprentice reading list, which is for, I mentioned I do a lot of one-on-one work with people. Some people will work with me in an apprenticeship capacity, where they spend a year working intensively with me, developing their skills, all of this kind of thing. And I have an apprenticeship reading list. And I often share that apprenticeship reading list with people I'm mentoring in other contexts as well. So what I might do with that reading list is pull it out at some point. And I'll think about a way of making that available. But I have a number of reading lists, and they keep evolving and changing all the time. So Don, thank you, Matthew, for that question. Don Walker is asking, when you get a chance, would you send me or talk about who you would recommend I continue studying with around meta models and understanding, as well as using language skills? I'm considering Christina Hall. However, she's a bit difficult for me to learn from via audio and videos because of her communication style. Could you please recommend on this? Thanks. So I don't know around the meta model. The meta model is kind of a simple-ish thing. I've often considered teaching the meta model myself, because one of the things about the meta model is it's a surface mapping of something. It gives you a lot of simple tools, and when people use those tools, they often upset people. But if you look at all the meta model, what were originally called the meta model violations, which is a really bad name, I think. If you look at all the meta model, let's call them distinctions. If you look at them all and you go deep into them, and you start to understand how they work in terms of shaping people's reality and their reality tunnels, then when you get a deep understanding of the meta model, it's much, much more easy to use intelligently without just like a robot upsetting people by asking them irritating questions. So the meta model is a very deep and very powerful thing. When you know, there's this thing that Ericsson allegedly said about Bandler and Grinder. They took the shell and left the nut. And I know they didn't get the meta model from modeling Ericsson, but I think that there's a nut that lies underneath the meta model. And I've only discovered that through exploring older therapeutic models, psychological models, changement models, and this kind of thing. Even going back to sort of Taoism and Buddhism and stuff like that, you start to see how these meta model violations, these meta model distinctions, are reflections in language of cognitive maneuvers and tricks and traps and stuff like that. When you understand how they work, you can see where it is you want to go and where it is you want to help people make shifts. I was talking about Sherlock Holmes coaching. For me, I want to be using that as part of the lot of clues that I'm gathering to inform my interventions rather than just be jumping on and questioning every meta model violation. I don't know who teaches meta model really well. Michael Breen, I understand, I've never studied his program, has a very good meta model program. At least it's very good in as much as I know people who I respect have recommended it. With regard to other language stuff, I recently purchased from Igor Ledochowski his mind-bending language deck, which I think is really good, and I think it's a very, very good product indeed. And a lot of that stuff is based on John Overdurf's stuff, and he's a very rich thinker in terms of language. So you might want to check out John Overdurf as well. So John Joe Gill. Hello, John. Thanks a lot, James. Once again, I've enjoyed listening and being honest, still practicing after 45 years. So good on you, John, for that. Always learning and endeavoring to improve. Excellently put across, sound advice. Love the gravity metaphor. Looking forward to next time. Well, thank you, John. Not so much a question. Appreciate it, though. Thank you. Don, did you get that Stop Smoking seminar finished, available for digital download and purchase? It is in raw form at the moment. I've been getting this developing group ready. At some point, I will be able to turn my energy and attention to listening through the audios from the smoking cessation seminar and editing them up for public release. I hope. I mean, I don't know what the quality's come out like or anything like that. I'm assuming it's good. And the same question from Matthew. So the same answer to Matthew. Pat asks, as a martial artist, when confronting an opponent, your mind focuses on the defense or attack in a combat sense. Do you collapse your mind on the target when hypnotizing them with your gaze, invading space, speech, etc.? It's an interesting question. For me, there's a big overlap between hypnosis and NLP and martial arts and stuff like that, because you're not just hitting people and crunching them. You are in a human dynamic. You are in a communication with them. It may be a rough communication, it may be a violent communication, but you are influencing each other on multiple levels, not just the physical level. So I recall a time, I'm going to tell a very quick story here, when I nearly got into a fight with some guy that had just conned me into a fraudulent parking space and taken a bunch of money from me at Wembley Arena. I was going to see the Walking with Dinosaurs show with my family, with my 2 young daughters, and my wife and my mum and dad were there, and I nearly end up in a fight with a very aggressive parking tout. You know, and it was interesting for me. The fight didn't happen, and maybe it's because I psyched him out or anything like that, but I didn't look him in the eyes or hypnotize him with my gaze or anything like this, but I dropped into fight mode. And I remember it very, very clearly, in that the guy ceased to be a human being. and became like a three-dimensional shadow or a space, almost like just an outline, like a silhouette, but in 3 dimensions. It was like he stopped being human and just became like a sort of a raw physicality, like a, because that's what I had to work with. I didn't want to start getting into trying to play analytically based mind games or anything like that. And I probably dropped into some sort of predator mode at that point, because I know there's a few occasions where I've almost had fights over the last couple of years, not because I go out and pick fights, but sometimes I walk around late at night when I've gone out to meet people in London. And I always drop into a particular mindset, which I'm a pretty peaceful guy. I'm not a violent guy. But if I think that someone is going to attack me, I drop into a mindset whereby my intent is on completely destroying them. And that's my space. I will, and I won't say how it goes in my mind, but I will destroy you is my whole energy. And what I found is this generally screams out non-verbally, and the person who was threatening me backs off. I'm not advocating that as a strategy. I'm just saying that's what I do. So you said you collapse your mind on the target. They become dehumanized. They become a system that I'm about to engage, and I'm about to engage them with what you might call maximum prejudice. So that's how I go psychologically. With regard to real fights, I've never had a single one since I studied martial arts. I've come close a number of times, but it's never happened. And I think a lot of it's because I'm not playing the role of the victim. That's my theory on it. So thank you for that question, Pat. Casper, hello Casper. Casper is asking, if the conscious-subconscious model is just a metaphor, would you say that the mind is one big soup of cognition? Or would it make sense to address the part that runs emotion, the part that runs creativity, and the part that runs conscious awareness? I would say both. In a sense, the mind could be seen as one big soup of cognition. And the order that's emergent within that is probably so complex, it's very difficult for us to map it accurately. So we need heuristic maps. We need heuristic maps of people's minds, people's psyches, how they work. Now, from time to time, I'll use the model of conscious and unconscious mind. If it seems like the easiest thing to do and I don't need to go deep with a client or whatever, I think it is useful to have different maps, and they will inform different choices. And it's useful to be able to switch different maps out. So if you say, well, there's a part that runs emotion, part that runs creativity, this kind of thing. I was reading a thing about the Dalai Lama earlier. Somebody had posted on Facebook saying how much more sophisticated Buddhist psychology was than modern psychology, in that it had distinctions between analytical and conceptual renderings of things and sensory renderings of things, which of course you get in NLP as well. These are useful things. I was talking about 2 modes of mind earlier, which I'm going to talk about very soon in the future, not on this call, in a lot more detail. That's a model, it's an idea. Even like left brain, right brain, if you look at Ian McGilchrist's book, The Open Focus Brain, that's got that similar kind of distinction. And it's useful. Is it true? No, it's a description. What is the truth? Not only more complex than you think, but more complex than you can think. So we end up working with maps. So I think it's useful to have multiple maps, and multiple maps. Different maps will serve you in different ways. All right then, so I went through, I've made a liar of myself on 2 levels. On the first level, I said this was going to be a short webinar, 45 minutes to an hour. I lied. We've been an hour and 45 minutes. I also said that I wouldn't answer all the questions, and I have answered all the questions. So I hope this has been useful for you. I hope there's been some perspectives in here that you can take and you can try on. You can look at the world through. You can consider how they may serve you and serve you yet more deeply. And also, if you're interested in discovering what's inside of the developing group, becoming part of the developing group, There was the question earlier about finding people to practice with. This is one of the things I want to happen through the developing group, is for people to be able to connect with each other and practice. Even if they don't live locally, there's still stuff you can do over Skype, practice-wise. You know, and that will serve you greatly, because in this modern era in which we live, if you want to make a career as a hypnotist, it's very useful to be able to work via Skype. Okay, so check out the developing group. Check out the link, which is below this and to the left-hand side as you look at it. And until we meet again, until we speak again, have a wonderful week, have a wonderful time, enjoy yourself, and take care.